Okie doke. Probably buffering like crazy, right? No? Okay. Okay. We'll see how well this works. I don't know how well this is going to work yet. do. All right, so let's get started. Putting up recording for this week's podcast, like so. Arm it for solo recording. Test, test, test. All right, 1, 2, 1, 2. Excuse me. Okay, test, test, test. Okay, let's go. Ow. Okay. Some events. All right. Keep an eye on that just to make sure it stays okay. All right. Here we go. I guess it should be nice and tweet out the link. I think we're going to add one more aspect to this, and I think that aspect is going to be live streaming the podcast every week. So every Saturday at about, I don't know, maybe noon-ish, maybe a little bit after noon, we'll put up a YouTube live stream of the podcast, and it won't be edited. It will be me actually recording it live. So you'll hear my flub ups if I have flub ups. We'll have a before and after sort of thing before we just get into the podcast itself. So if you want to listen to the recorded version, great. You guys can listen to that. It'll be available on our website. We have links to iTunes, RSS feeds. You can add it to whatever podcasting program you have, which will be great. And then if you want to, listen to it live, maybe we'll add some community comments in there or whatever have you. We'll have that live option too to kind of jazz up the weekly podcast in a different sort of way. So I think we'll be doing that from now on. It seems like it should be a pretty good idea. No video just yet. It'll just be a placard of just saying the episode number and the date, which this is being recorded on Saturday, February 8th, 2014. Gosh, getting the dates messed up. Anyways, let's talk about the news this week. There's a lot of very interesting news, a lot of big player news, a lot of smaller news, and a lot of why would you do that sort of news. Also, we'll jump in directly with this story called AT&T patents concept to detect and charge more for certain traffic. Basically, what AT&T wants to do is they want to see what sort of traffic you're using as a majority. Say if you're watching a ton of Netflix, if you're going to a certain website, if you're streaming some sort of data, they want to get a patent. And well, actually, they did get the patent, but they're going to use that patent. Hopefully, if they put this into implementation, they basically want to charge you more for certain traffic. So say you pay cents on the dollar for regular web traffic. Well, they want the option to say, hey, we see you're using a lot of traffic from this one website. So guess what? We're going to charge you even more cents on the dollar just for going to this website because we can and we want to nickel and dime you. Now, I in no way think that this is a good idea for any sort of thing at all. This is a horrible idea. Just when you think about it, because if we take a step back and think about it, that means that this isn't very good. And if AT&T even implements this, I can guarantee you a lawsuit will be filed within a month of them inputting this new tactic, because it's not something that anybody out there is going to like. Paying more for the same service that you've already been using just because you're going to a certain website, that doesn't make sense. And, talking about all this charging more for certain websites, let's talk about the other part of that. Telecommunication companies can kind of regulate you in two ways. One, by nickel and diming you, and two, by slowing down your web traffic. So even though you have the fastest internet out there, you might not be served that internet traffic all the best possible way. The biggest example here was a story from this last week where Verizon denies using net neutrality victory to sabotage Netflix and Amazon. So basically, the net neutrality laws have just been struck down, all of them. So basically, these telecommunication companies can now run wild without any sort of regulation to regulate them. So that means that they can regulate your traffic, they can degrade your traffic because they can. Biggest players here right now are Verizon and AT&T, and the biggest losers here are Netflix and Amazon. They bring a lot of network traffic over the whole of the world, including Netflix with a lot of their video streaming data and Amazon with their cloud services, as well as people going to their website. So what are they starting to do? And people have already, had discussions about this, but this week it was a bit interesting, because some guy went to the tech support of, I believe, Verizon and asked, "Are you throttling my data?" And after a little bit of pushing, the person on the other side said, "Yes, we're throttling your data because we can." So that opens it up to a lot of net neutrality laws, net neutrality discussions. One of the biggest discussions came from Verizon saying, "We don't limit your traffic, especially to Netflix and Amazon," which of course isn't true when it was confirmed, even though through a feed, which it's a tech support person, so they may not know everything, but I think they're pretty much more in the loop where they would know this sort of thing, which is kind of interesting to me, at least. And I still don't get why. I mean, you have all of this cable, and I really want to be a supporter of these net neutrality laws, because yes, there is such a thing as a free market economy, and within these free market economies, they should be able to run themselves. But when these companies already have such substantial monopolies in areas, it creates a huge issue when it comes to pricing and when it comes to service. Because Comcast basically runs the West Coast, they can charge out the butt for crappy service, because they can. Because in my neighborhood, you get two options. You get Comcast, or you get really crappy DSL internet. Obviously, which one am I going to pick? I'm going to have to pick Comcast, because, well, they're the fastest that I can get. It's more reliable than DSL, and you can't get other people into these neighborhoods, into these places, because, well, Comcast has a monopoly. We talked about last week how in Kansas they're trying to pass a bill to basically say any local telecommunication company should be banned because it hurts big companies, which doesn't really make sense all that often if you look at it. And if this bill goes through, then they're going to use that as a premise to make that a blanket law everywhere. So enough talking about that, because I obviously am very pissed off at telecommunication companies right now. So I'm not going to go any further than that. But we are going to talk about something that's not dying, and that's Windows XP. Did you know that Windows XP was released 13 years ago and is still widely used? And I attribute that to, not because it's very popular. Well, it actually was very popular, but that's not my train of thought right now. My train of thought is thinking about it. All of these companies back nowadays. Windows XP was this turnkey, revolutionary software. And when people bought their computers, they usually came with XP on them. And when we had this huge boom of new companies set back 13 years ago and they bought computers for their companies, what did they come with? Of course, they came with Windows XP. And for the last 13 years, I bet you those same computers have been used and will continue to be used until they die, basically. So we won't see a huge shift in XP to Windows 7 or even Windows 8 until these business machines get, basically die out. But XP holds 29.23% of the market, compared to Windows 7, which has 47%, and Windows 8, which has 6%. XP is more popular than Windows 8, which I find hilarious because you have this company that is creating software basically every, I want to say 4 years, yet the software that they made 13 years ago is still more popular than what they've just released. Now, if you compare that to the Mac system, it's a different scale. If you look back 13 years ago at the OS that they released, you'll see a fraction of a percent. I mean, maybe 1 or 2% of distribution of that compared to their current version. So it's kind of interesting. And Microsoft is going to be killing off XP this I believe it's this year. They're killing off XP support this year, which is going to open it up to a whole different sort of issues. And that issues, of course, is security patches and keeping it patched up and ready to go. XP is going to lose all that support. When I used XP, the updating system wasn't all the best, but it's still something to have when you're trying to keep yourself secure. And when I'm talking about something to secure, I want to jump to this story too, because it kind of segues into it. There's a new security vulnerability out there. It has to do with images, specifically PNG images. You have a lot of images out there and a lot of image types. You have JPEGs, which is usually a smaller compression size, and it will generally be smaller, which is generally preferred on the internet when you're serving web pages. But there's also PNGs as well, which I'm sure we're going to find here in the next couple of weeks, even a couple of months, how to get around that. But it's kind of scary to see how these injections of codes, this malware, getting onto systems in very unique ways. It's not just a hey, download this, and it's a hidden download link instead of you installing the software yourself. Now it's turning into what can we hide it in, and what can we do with it? And it's kind of scary how it can jump around. Now, what this does is it basically creates an iframe with negative space. So it's going to be in the web page. You won't see it because it's an iframe and it's like a negative 1000 by 1000 pixels. So it's a non-existent pixel on the web browser, and it will redirect it anywhere to a page where it might inject code into your browser more maliciously than it will be. But it looks like right now that it just works with iframes. So we haven't seen any fixes right now, but it's kind of scary to see. And definitely am going to be a little bit more wary on what comes out of that. But let's talk about Comcast, because we haven't talked about telecommunication companies a lot. And I meant to put this in a little bit earlier when we were talking about the story with the throttling the internet. Well, let's talk about this one. This big guy basically calls up Comcast saying, hey, I've got this Wi-Fi network and people are using my Wi-Fi. And they're like, oh yeah, the new Wi-Fi router we sent you has public Wi-Fi built in. So basically what Comcast is doing is they're exchanging a lot of business-based Wi-Fi routers with Wi-Fi routers that have two SSIDs. One is your SSID and one is Comcast SSID. And basically what Comcast SSID is a Wi-Fi hotspot for Comcast users. So if you maybe travel to a coffee shop, travel to a friend's house, travel abroad, you might see these Wi-Fi hotspots saying Comcast or Xfinity or whatever have you. And basically what it is, it's a hotspot. And most of these are actually turning into customers' routers who are creating these ghost hotspots. And the reason it becomes such an issue is because it leeches off of your internet. So if you have a 50 megabit line, well, it's going to be taking up some of that line. So, if someone decides to use the hotspot and start downloading a huge file and it's sucking up all your internet, well, then your internet at your business is going to start sucking, right? Yeah. So this guy was basically outraged, and I'm outraged with him on this issue in multiple ways. The biggest way, sorry, I'm sick. The biggest way is that they didn't inform him. They didn't tell him. It wasn't a feature that was listed when the guy got the new router. No, it was, hey, it's here, but we're not telling you. That's why I prefer to have my own hardware. When we got Comcast, I purchased my own router and I purchased my own cable box because I don't want to use Comcast. But plus, they were charging a fee on top of that to rent one. So I was like, no, I'm going to buy one in, 8 months? It would pay for itself. And guess what? It's been 8 months. It's already paid for itself. So why would I continue paying a fee? Especially for something that I believe should be delivered for free, because you're paying a lot of money for internet service. Why not create all these, great features, basically? And that's a whole nother topic. But let's move on to, I believe, the biggest news this week. And I believe it's the biggest news because it's going to be a change of direction for a certain company. And this is a critical change of direction for this company that can either hurt it or boost it up to the next level. And that is Microsoft's new CEO is Satya Nadella. This guy is a longtime Microsoft person. He has been all around the Microsoft. He's a top-level employee, now the CEO. What does that mean for the company? Well, it means a new direction. Steve Ballmer, I still personally use Windows 7 when I use Windows. I will not use Windows 8, but that's personally me. So we'll have to see what he does with Xbox, what he does with all of the cloud services, the hardware, whatever have you. We're going to have to see what happens there. And of course, we'll be following that very in depth as he makes announcements, because all we have right now is just his announcements and what he's doing. So let's move on here and talk about, I think, one of the another pivotal moment. We're having all these pivotal moments this week, and this pivotal moment is graphene conducts electricity 10 times better than expected. And what does that mean for you and technology? Well, that means that Moore's Law is probably going to still happen. I believe it's Moore's Law. And that's yes, it is Moore's Law. And that is the number of transistors will effectively double every 2 years. And I believe that this new graphene technology that they're developing and that they're looking into is going to help Moore's Law still be possible, because a lot of people are saying, well, Moore's Law is slowing down. It hasn't slowed down yet, and this new introduction of graphene into using it in electronics can possibly bring that to the next level. And we probably won't see this integrated for another 5 or 6 years, even 10 years tops. But I believe this is how the hardware market is going to go. This is how our technology in the future is going to be run. It's going to be run by graphene, then by by what we have right now, which is silicone. Silicone is great. It's created all these great, massive supercomputers, but unfortunately, it isn't getting. It's kind of almost reaching its limits And to push it beyond that limits, we need to switch what we use, and that's going to be graphene. And basically what it is graphene is a single, basically what they're using it for is a single atom thick of carbon, basically. And these researchers have found that it transmits electricity 10 times better than what silicone has. Silicone has been great, but now that we're finding this new technology, I believe it's in our future to see new technology, motherboards, hardware in general now going to be using this carbon technology. It's still a ways out, but we could see it coming to mobile devices and motherboards near you. Now, let's talk about something controversial. What's controversial, you might ask? It's California's new bill to make a mandatory kill switch on phones and tablets by 2015. And what that means is that, like the iPhone has already with its kill switch that you can activate, so basically if you lose your phone, you can go to iCloud.com, go to Find My iPhone, and you can basically disable it. That is what California wants to introduce to make a law for all phones and tablets by 2015. Now, I can see this as a great law because what is the most stolen technology? Of course, it's going to be tablets and phones. It's much easier to steal a tablet or a phone than it is to steal a full desktop, even to steal a full laptop, because you can slip them into your pockets, into your bags, and they're just going to be gone. Now, I love Apple because they've taken this to the next step. They've introduced iCloud, Find My iPhone, and I believe it's really helped break down, especially in the latest version, it's really helped to break down the finding of phones and actually getting them back to their owners. Because, in the newest version, I believe in iOS 7, it is locked. You can't just overwrite the software. You actually have to unlock it before you can reinstall the software. So what a lot of thieves would do is they would take these phones, they would basically plug them into their computers, and they would reinstall a new, fresh base of software. Well, with an iOS 7, you actually have to log in with your iTunes ID to do that, and it won't allow it to do that if you haven't entered your iTunes ID. And I think that's a great technology, and I believe it should be in all of these devices, but whether to make that, I think this is great for them because, you have those people out there in the world, as a majority of these people that unfortunately are going to install some sort of malware on their system that changes their browser, changes what they're using. And I believe Chrome is being on the forefront there and alerting you to these type of changes. I think that's great. And I think that's definitely what needs to happen. So that's great there. And we've got just a couple more stories here, and these are stories that I really wanted to get to, so hopefully we can get to them before we end out the podcast. So this one is kind of an extension, I believe, of last week. I don't remember what we talked about in last week's thing, unfortunately. But basically, Candy Crush was basically patented the word candy. And they made this kind of argument after people got mad at them, saying, well, we want to protect our brand. We want to protect our company, and we've trademarked this word. It's a general word, candy. The word has been around before Candy Crush. So whether or not I think that trademark is true, I'm going to say no. A lot no. Especially for a game that mimics a game that has been out since, the early computer years. Candy Crush is just a clone of a game with a different assets, basically, if you look at it, because it's like Bejeweled. It's basically like Bejeweled, but with candy. So, if all this goes through, I would challenge, I believe it's EA who owns the brand of Bejeweled, I think. Who owns I'll have to figure that out. But anyways, basically what these developers are now doing is they're creating apps that are candy-like, that have candy in the name, and are basically going to flood the App Store with these candy apps to kind of combat the trademark of candy, and they want to show how much they're against of what the maker of this has done, and they've been very controversial in the past, I would say, this company who creates Candy Crush. Apparently, as I was reading some other articles a few weeks ago, they actually cloned another game that they had hired somebody to do, but the developer who was going to license the game with them, and they were still in talks, they really hadn't signed any paperwork, they basically, pulled away from the deal because the deal wasn't all that good on their end, and they went with somebody else. So the makers of this game basically had the game cloned by some other developer and released it after the first game came out as as a sign of, we don't like that you did that, so we're just going to clone your game. Whatever. This whole mobile market has been very frustrating and confusing, and has incited a lot of battles between people that I don't think should have happened. But what can you do? And of course, it's still talking about how, all these trademarks. We'll talk about how Facebook has come out with a new app. Facebook's new app is called Paper. Paper is, what we look at it, is a excellent application that brings a whole new face to Facebook. But the thing is, their Paper app on iOS, there's an app on the iTunes App Store already called Paper, and it's made by 53, a developer called 53, and they have this wonderful application. I think we've actually reviewed it on the LogicLounge YouTube channel, and it's a great application. You can use it on your tablet to basically create these drawings, because you have a whole bunch of tools at your fingertips. And so right now they are, asking Facebook to change their app name because it conflicts with their app name, and people are getting confused. And of course, Facebook, being the mega company it is, they're not responding to these makers at all. So what have they done? They've filed I believe that they followed a lawsuit against them that sent were humans. It's now 38.5%. That's a lot of non-human traffic just to come out of 1 year. That's up 21% from last year is, bot traffic. And, it's basically because the technology is so accessible on the internet. The internet can be used for such malicious things. There's no governing body around the internet, so to speak. I'm going to say so to speak because it depends what country you're in. And if you're in these different countries, they may not have any laws at all about internet and technology. So you have all these hackers from like Malaysia and, all of these foreign countries who basically what they do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is try to steal your information by creating bots, by creating you know how many fake IMs I get per day? It's insane. That thing has risen. It's like kind of like, hey, you want to come see me on cam? Here's a link. Oh, they want your credit card, but they won't charge you. It's one of those things. And, admittedly, some of these hackers are getting smarter by when you call them a bot, they'll no, I'm not a bot. And, you just keep typing. Like, if you keep typing periods, it will just keep going through the script no matter what. I'll ask it, hey, you want my social security number too? Oh, you want my credit card numbers? Hey, you want my bank account info? And you just see, oh, yeah, come, see me. It's hilarious. I love, it's fun at some points to kind of play around with them because you see their candid responses. But, this traffic, and I'm specifically talking about a subset of traffic of impersonators and hackers, it definitely should somehow be combated with the internet. And I don't know how to do that yet because I'm not one of those people who knows how to do that. But, seeing that a large part of human traffic is shrinking because of the growing traffic of non-humans, is kind of concerning for me. And I say that because the internet is such a place where we can have free minds, we can free think, we can, have a voice. And if it is constantly under attack by DDoSes, by people trying to steal information, it makes it a less desirable place for a lot of people, and can be very bad for some people as well. So it's something that is somewhat of a double-edged sword. It's great, but it could kill you and take all of your information. And I think I'll leave that as something to think about this week. The internet. How great is it? But how much corruption is there on it? I'll ask you that question. And before we go, I'd like to ask you guys, do you guys like listening to audiobooks? I love audiobooks. I listen to about a book a week, maybe a book every 2 weeks. And the only service that I use, because I find it as just having a huge library, having great options, is of course Audible. Audible has been a wonderful supporter of LogicLounge in the past. They've always been great to us, and we want to return the favor to you guys and offer you guys a pretty good deal. And that is, if you use our link, audibletrial.com/logic. That's audibletrial.com/logic. You can get a free audiobook when you sign up for their trial. And if you choose not to keep that trial, you get to keep that audiobook for free, no matter what. You can cancel your trial at any point, and all the audiobooks that you've gotten through the trial, you can keep. And I find that completely amazing. They've got a ton of selections. Look, they have over 100,000 audiobooks. You'll find everything from the latest intergame books. You'll find, documentaries. I want to call it documentaries, but you'll find biographies. You'll find, all of these great books out there. And this week, I did start the Ender's Game book. And I can tell you, I really like it. The voice narrator in that is great. So I invite you guys, use our link, audibletrial.com/logic. Get a free book, any free book, and you can keep it even if you choose to end your trial. So that's, once again, audibletrial.com/logic. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to Audible for being a wonderful sponsor. And of course, all right.